Hello everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 from 6 months ago. Today we're looking back at the list from March 29th, 2019, and I'm recording this on September 27th, 2019. And as always, the dates are just so you know when this information was most relevant. This week's list has some hot covers, a couple of hot indies, and a couple of books that were on brief hiatus from this list but are back as strong as ever. So, without further ado, let's get into the list, see what we can learn from the books that were hot 6 months ago, and whether we should have been patient or we should have bought. And as you all know, generally, we need to be patient. So, first up at number 10 is Neon Future, number 1. And this was just a hot indie, had a little buzz around it coming out. Week of release, it jumped right up to $10 to $15, and now it's basically a cover price, maybe cover price plus shipping kind of book. Honestly, I'm not even sure if it's still coming out. Haven't heard anything about it other than since basically the initial buzz at the release of the first issue. And just one of those indies that had a little buzz, kind of jumped up, and has fallen away because it didn't have anything to maintain that momentum. Next is the return to the list after a brief hiatus of Die number 1. And this is, of course, the Stephanie Hans A cover. And Die is basically was off the list for like a week. And really back in the spring, this is about the time that Die was really kind of the hot book of the moment. I want to say issue 4 was probably coming out around then. Maybe issue 3 was all that was out, but Die had a lot of buzz. It was an indie that kind of started off a little slow and then built momentum as people found the story and really started to enjoy it. And by this point, it was up to $25 to $30 for the Stephanie Hans A cover. It actually peaked sometime between. It actually got higher at some point when they made option announcements back in the summer. It has dropped back a little bit from the peak, but basically it's still going for that $25 to $30 range. So this book has been very consistent really over the last 6 months. It's been basically a $20 to $30 book, other than the little peak that occurred around the option news announcement. 9.8s for this one can be had anywhere from 75 to 125. And listings are basically, for raw books, are basically that 25 to 35 kind of range, with 9.8s being listed usually 100 plus, but like I said, you can find them for as low as 75 on occasion. So that is number 9 on our list, Die number 1. Number 8 on our list is our first kind of just hot cover this week, and that is Age of Xmen, or Xman Extremis number 2, and this is the 1 in 25 Jenny Frison cover. And this was just a hot variant, week of release. This wasn't a highly ordered book, a 1 in 25 with a hot cover artist. So there wasn't a lot of them out there necessarily. And right off the bat, this book jumped to $40 week of release. And it's just kind of slowly fallen back since then. Currently, it is down to a $10 to $15 book. Although people are still asking more in the $20 to $30 range for it. I couldn't find any 9.8 sales of this book. It is a gorgeous cover, but there haven't been any sales yet. There was only one 9.8 slab listed, and it was listed for $150. So that is Age of Xman Extremis number 2, the Frison cover. And again, this is just, one of those hot incentives that was kind of a low print, but that people have kind of just forgotten about with all the other hot 1 in 25 incentives that have come out since. And number 7 on the list is Ultimate Comics Spider-Man number 26. And this is the first Ultimate Taskmaster. And so, why does anybody care about the first Ultimate Taskmaster? Well, because this all has to do with buzz around the Black Widow movie. And I think there were set photos, and the costume looked more like the ultimate version of the Taskmaster than the original version. So people were kind of jumping all over this book. And basically, it spiked to $50. The interesting thing is CBSI basically said, like, In the course of a week, it jumped from like a cover price book to a $50 book. But by the time they actually released, and it was there for over the weekend, a couple of days, and then by the time they actually released the list, it had already settled back to a $20 book. So that shows you right there how hard the book spiked when those pictures came out, but how quickly it fell back off after that initial rush. So even if you don't have patience for like months, even a little bit of patience on some of these things can really pay off if you're looking for those kind of books. In this case, even $20 probably wouldn't have paid off. It's now basically a $10 book. Occasionally someone will pay $15 to $20, but generally it's going for $10. Asking prices are all in that $10 to $20 range. There are no 9.8s listed currently. And the only sale of a 9.8 I could find on eBay was a best offer was accepted on a $400 asking price. I had the feeling they didn't get anywhere near $400, but there's no way for me to check that. So we'll just kind of ignore that, I guess. Basically, there are none listed right now, and that's the only sale of a slab on this one. And I don't have a good idea of exactly what it went for. So that's Ultimate Comics Spider-Man number 26, the first Ultimate Taskmaster. If you want a first Taskmaster, go with the original and don't mess with this one. Would be my recommendation. Number 6 on the list is Option News, and this is Niobe She Is Life number 1, the Hockneys variant. I don't know that I'm pronouncing that guy's name or gal's name right. Hoknes. And this is a variant that's limited to 100. There's only 100 of these available. And basically, HBO confirmed rumors that they had optioned this for a show. And this being the extreme rare variant of the number 1. Basically, raw copies of this book jumped to $700 that week. Mind you, there's only 100 in existence. And that was less than a month after a 9.8 had went for $350. So, yeah, like, raws were going for double what a 9.8 had went for a month before. There's only been one sale of a 9.8 since then. It went for $1,200 all the way back in April. There's only, been 3. The most recent raw sale was clear back in August, and it went for $900. So this book has actually continued to kind of go up, but there have been no sales since right at the beginning of August. Currently, there's only 2 raw copies listed, one for $475 and one for $750. And then there's a 9.6 listed for $950. So there's just not many of these out there based on the number of sales we've had and just the few that are listed. We will see. I don't know that this book is a $1,000 book, but if the series turns out to be good, this one might continue to be super hard to get, pricey variant. So with that, let's move into the top 5. And number 5 on the list, we have Dark Age number 1, the Comics Pro Ashcan edition. And this is basically, this Dark Age number 1 was getting a lot of buzz as a series, and it hadn't actually come out yet. But this Ashcan version of the number 1 had come out, so it hadn't been released to comic shops or anything else. It was the only version on the market at the time, and there was already an announcement that Dark Age number 1 had been optioned. So it was optioned before the release of number 1 to the public. So this Ashcan was out there, and people went crazy trying to get this thing. It jumped from basically a $10 book to an $80 book after the option news. Right now, I could only find 3 sales in the last several months of this one, of the Ashcan version of this Dark Age number 1. They were all best offers accepted on around $100, so my guess is they're going for that $75, $80 kind of dollar range. Currently, there's only 1 listed, and it's listed for $140, and there are no slab sales or listings of this Ashcan, so I think it's pretty hard to find. It's still maintaining pretty good value. Because Dark Age has been optioned, but we all know option can mean that we don't see anything actually in production for years. So, with that, we're going to move on to number 4 on the list. and it is Marvel Rising #1, the Peach Momoko 1 in 25 variant. And like the Frozen variant, this is just a low ordered book, a 1 in 25. People gravitated toward this cover. I think Peach Momoko has a variant that's actually hitting the list this week. So that just came out. So kind of a hot artist. People like her style. So a low order #1 incentive, and right out of the gate, this thing was going for $100. It's not that cool, but to me, I mean, I think it's kind of a fun variant, but I'm not sure what makes it $100. Well, it hasn't maintained that. Now it's a $15 to $20 book, which actually isn't that bad for 6 months after a 1 in 25 comes out. $15, $20, that's pretty decent maintenance on value. Sometimes though it's still going for $40, and that's really just because all the asking prices are like 50 plus. So almost all the sales, but a couple in the last 3 months have been for 15 to 20. There's been like 3 or 4 that went for 40, but everybody still wants $50 for it, which is interesting considering 9.8, the only 2 9.8 sales of this book went for 55 and 75, which tells you it's a $10 to $15 book. And although the 9.8 currently being asking price for that is $150 right now, and there's only one listed for that. So that is Marvel Rising #1, the Peach Momoko 1 in 25 variant. With that, we'll move on to #3, and that is Bitterroot #1 and more option news. So this book basically jumped from $1 bin to $15 because it was announced that it had been optioned. So now, what does it go for? Well, this one was interesting. Literally, there were sales in the last couple weeks. Forget last couple months, last couple weeks, for $1 to $20 for this book. Generally, the asking price is around $10, but yeah, their sales it's been going from anywhere from $1 to $20. There's only been 5 sales of 9.8, and they have went for, not in this order, there's been 2 sales that went for $35 of a 9.8 of this book, and 3 sales that went for $100 of this book in a 9.8. So the difference between a cover price book and a $20 book generally on a 9.8. So shows you there's a lot of variety in, or range in what this book is going for. If you're interested in Bitterroot, I would be a little patient, and I think you could probably find one for basically cover price. Currently, like I said, they're asking mostly $10 for it. 9.8, the only 9.8 listed is listed for $80. And now at #2, we get back to our old friend, everybody drink, Immortal Hulk #1 or #2, the Zafino 1 in 25 variant. And this book, what was I gonna? Well, this book just continued to chug along back in the spring. People love them, the Dr. Fry. They love this 1 in 25 variant. Back then, 9.8 hit $800 for this variant. They actually would peak in April around 1,000, and currently are going for around $400 to $500. Although the last 2 have actually been right at $400. Raws are currently going for, are all the way back down to 75 to 125. They were going for between 200 and 300 back in March when this was on the list. People are still asking between 200 and 300 for raw copies. People are still asking 600 plus for 9.8. They're just not really getting it anymore. So here's the deal. So for the next several weeks, we're going to continue to see Immortal Hulk books as we look back. And like I said, because it peaks clear out at $1,000, but all of them are on the decline. If you were holding Immortal Hulk thinking it was a train that was going to just keep going, it's not. It is starting to decline. I think we might get another little bump if they really stick the landing on #25. But a series like this, with no follow-up for this character, it's not going to continue to grow forever. The book is coming back down. Like I said, you can now get this book recent sales have all been in the 75 to 125 range, with more of them in the 75 to 100 range than in the 125 range. I would say the peak on this book is probably past. It'll probably never reach those $1,000 heights again. If you got caught up in the hype, sorry, it's still a book. I mean, it's a brand new book, and it's still going for $400 and a 9.8 slab. So it's not like it's like no value, but yeah, it's not going to maintain that crazy value it had back in the spring. So with that, let's move on to number 1 on our list this week, and this was Detective Comics 1000, the Alex Ross Homage to Detective 27 variant. And this is just a gorgeous homage to Tech 27. It was a store exclusive. There wasn't a ton of them. I think it was limited to 1,000. And basically, the retailer set of 2 was originally going for $75. The 2 Alex Ross covers, the one that obviously doesn't look like this. This one alone was going for over $200 when it hit the list back at the end of March, the week of release of the book. It's still going for 100 to 150, 160-ish raw. Although 9.8s are only going for 200. And the reason for that is there's already like 70 or 80 9.9s on the census. So 9.9s are out there to be had, and they're typically going between $300 and $400. So people want the 9.9 instead of the 9.8. And it really just comes down to the fact this is one of those kind of hardbound books that there's a bunch of, if you look on a lot of these covers for Tech 1000, there's actually a fair number of 9.9s floating around of most of those covers. So that is what's kept the 9.8 down around 200, while the raw copies are still consistently going in 150 plus or minus range. Currently, people are asking, like I said, 120 plus for a raw copy. 9.8s are being asked for right at 200, and 9.9s are going in that are asking between 300 and 400. Asking prices right now are closer to 400 to 500 probably, but they've been selling between 300 and 400. So a tip on this though, if you go and look this up, and it got me for just a minute, and you look for sales or listings, you're going to find listings for $20, $25, $30. That is the Mexican variant, and based on what I could see, basically the only way to really tell apart is instead of May, it says Mayo, M-A-O, M-A-Y-O, in the top corner. So the Mexican variant, so if you just love the cover, the Mexican variant can be had for like $30 if you just want to look at this, as opposed to the U.S. version, which is going for between around $150. So that is this week's list. We had some option news, some of which has continued to keep books high, some of which have dropped off. We had some hot covers, some incentives that peaked and dropped. And Immortal Hulk was continuing its climb to the stratosphere, and Die, after a 1-week hiatus, was back on the list. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.